To me, there are many, many tragedies. There's the tragedy of Katrina and the ongoing suffering of people because of the lack of meaningful response from the federal government. There's the tragedy that we are not right now really focused on coming up with the sort of levees that are needed. And the last tragedy is we're not doing anything with these wetlands.
You talk about the wetlands, and I think to people who don't live here, that sort of becomes a very abstract term. Can we see what wetlands look like?
We're back with Dr. Ivor van Heerden of the LSU Hurricane Center on his boat in the Tchefuncte River just north of New Orleans. Dr. van Heerden is an advocate of a multiple line of defense strategy for protecting New Orleans and vicinity. Building new and stronger levees would protect the city, and rebuilding the wetlands would protect the levees.
This is a pretty dense forest, if you will, of trees, and the surge coming through this, it feels one tree and it has to go around that tree, has to go around the next, go around the next. So we still don't have absolute numbers, but a cypress swamp like this could knock the surge down at least a foot per mile of cypress swamp. And when you recognize seaward of New Orleans, there were maybe at times 20 miles of cypress swamp seaward of the city, gives you an idea of how much protection the city's lost.
So when people say what a dumb place to put a city, it wasn't that dumb when we had that amount of protection.
No, it wasn't dumb. I mean, every single major port in the world is built at sea level or close to sea level. That's just the nature of the beast in many ways. The difference is that New Orleans has now sunk since it was built. Originally the city was above sea level, and now it's sunk to below sea level. And so it's experienced global warming ahead of its time. But many, many other major ports are going to experience the same sorts of problems. They also going to feel like they're sinking as sea level rises. They're also going to have to require levees and other infrastructure to protect them from the tides and surges. We need to come up with a very defensible plan that we can give this new president and say, this is the plan for coastal Louisiana. And we're saving the fisheries, which is important to the whole country. We're also saving the oil and gas industry, which is very important to the whole country. And we're going to be learning new techniques. We're going to be generating new technology that'll be applicable elsewhere in the country and may be exportable overseas.
So what happened that resulted in our losing the equivalent of a football field of wetlands every 30 minutes?
We leveed the Mississippi River. So in the past, the river used to overflow its banks every year with the floods. So we used to spread the goodness of the Mississippi River, the nutrients and the sediment-laden water, over a very large area. Now we've confined the Mississippi River to a canal. It's a canal that enters Louisiana and flows out into the Gulf of Mexico, with very little of its sediment going out anywhere. So we've literally starved our wetlands to death. And then to almost add insult to injury, in our search for the very cheap oil and gas that we get from coastal Louisiana, we've dredged hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of miles of canals. If you have a straight connection from the Gulf inland, you bring salt water in. And the salt water knocks out the freshwater plants, and especially the freshwater cypress trees. I mean, we just got to mimic nature.
The third step of Dr. van Heerden's strategy is to rebuild the barrier islands to protect the wetlands.
Barrier islands are very easy to restore.
This is like what we're passing right by here.
Yeah. If you look at the East Coast, prime examples are like New Jersey and Miami and different places where we mine sand offshore and we put it on the beach. And we build a beach, a recreational beach. That's all we need to be doing for our barrier islands. We've got high-quality sands off coastal Louisiana in federal waters. The federal government's already given permission to mine them.
And what does the barrier island do for the marsh behind it?
Well, the first thing it does is it knocks down the wave energy. So as you knock down the wave energy, so you reduce the erosion. The second important thing is it helps reduce the surge. Imagine in the past we used to have barrier islands that were in essence a wall across the southern part of the state and another wall up the eastern side. Now we just have a few strings of islands left. And so the surge goes through these without hardly feeling them. The tide goes much further inland than it used to. And so in many parts we're actually drowning our wetlands because they're getting exposed to too much salt water.
On a personal basis, how have the past 2 years been for you?
We've been running, sometimes 18-hour days, 7 days a week, trying to do all the research and trying to help the various citizens groups. It hasn't always been a very happy time because, number one, you don't get to spend much time with your family, but number two is my employer, I feel, in my opinion, has gone out of their way to make my life a misery. And I fully suspect that I could lose my job by continuing to point out that the federal government and the Corps of Engineers are responsible for this mess. But, science is a quest for the truth, and as long as we can, we're going to get the truth out there.
If you were forced to the wall and said, are you an optimist or a pessimist about what's going to happen here, what would you say?
I'm an optimist because what I've seen here is the citizens are filling the vacuum. We've got some very powerful citizens groups who are growing, becoming more powerful, are exercising their voice, and are willing to go to Washington and to face politicians and force them to listen. So I'm an optimist. I believe in democracies, and we've seen our democracy working a little bit with these citizens groups, and I think ultimately they are going to be heard and they are going to be successful.
I'm glad to hear the sound of modern optimism. Thanks, Ivor.
Thanks.